Hello there friends, my name is Rachel, GNS Middle, Gilbert and Sullivan is my middle name and my middle name is my last name. And I am here on behalf of Full Bear Theatre to explore the magic of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas by very pedantically ranking every element of them. And today I am talking very quietly because I am in a little B&B because I'm in the middle of a wedding, not my own. That would be very inappropriate to be filming a video. I am currently in between the ceremony and the reception of a dear friend's wedding, and I thought I would film a video, which is meant to be released tomorrow. I'm very busy at the moment. I'm currently rehearsing for a production of a GNS parody show called The Students of Penzance, and I'm also preparing in anticipation for Forbear Theatre to perform the Gondoliers at the end of May at Hever Castle. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing at the moment. But today we are looking at the Patience dialogue, and thankfully I've actually already filmed the dialogue. I filmed it with William Remmers when I was in New York. And the interesting thing about these dialogues is that we filmed them on the very last day that I was in New York, after we'd already filmed another video ranking the paterolles. And then we did it between midnight and 1:30 in the morning, and I had to get up at 3:30 to catch my plane back to the UK. So as you can probably tell, I for one, am exhausted in this video. And my makeup is completely coming off. So you are seeing Rachel GNS Middle really not at her best. But having said that, even though I look terrible and our camera angles are pants, I was really interested by the way we read the dialogue because we were so close together and we were doing it in a house and couldn't really be very loud. It gave it a very filmic quality and it's a little bit avant-garde, but you can probably see just how tired we were as well. But please do enjoy. I am probably going to be using slightly different parameters to rank these because at the moment, I think they might all just get 40 out of 40 because these scenes are all so good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe think of some other parameters right now to rank them as I go through them. And then I might retrospectively apply that to all the other dialogue scenes I've done so far, because 40 points is simply not enough.
There is a strange magic in this love of ours, rivals as we all are in the affections of our Reginald. The very hopelessness of our love is a bond that binds us to one another. Jealousy is merged in misery, while he, the very cynosure of our eyes and hearts, remains icy and sensible. What have we to strive for?
The love of Maidens is to him as interesting as the taxes.
Would that it were he pays his taxes and cherishes the receipts. Happy receipts.
Fools.
I beg your pardon.
Fools and blind. The man loves. Wildly loves.
But whom? None of us.
No, none of us. His weird fancy has lighted for the nonce on Patience, the village milkmaid.
On Patience, so it cannot be.
Bah! But yesterday I caught him in her dairy, eating fresh butter with a tablespoon. Today he is not well.
But Patience boasts that she has never loved, that love is to her a sealed book. Oh, he cannot be serious.
'Tis but a fleeting fancy. 'Twill quickly wear away. Oh, Reginald, if you knew what a wealth of golden love is waiting for you stored up in this rugged old bosom of mine, the milkmaid's triumph would be short indeed.
My text was different. I didn't have happy receipts. And
Oh, really?
thankfully, you didn't say anything, so I was like, that must be here. And I just
That's interesting. So all I've done with these parameters is I've added in another 10-point category for emotional dramatic stakes, which was missing before. So this one gets a 42 out of 50. I actually only gave it a 7 for comedy, and I think if I was thinking about it really rigorously, In relation to some of the ones I've talked about already in The Sorcerer, Pirates and Pinafore, this will probably get a 10. But the thing is, I'm just aware that there are way funnier scenes coming up, so I'm trying to just give these scenes like a bit of distance from each other. But I can already tell this is going to be really hard. This dialogue delivers narrative so well because it delivers the narrative through emotion. And this is one of the most emotional choruses in GNS. As I was saying in my chorus videos, the Rapturous Maidens are so good at delivering exposition because they are emotional, and it's easier for us to digest narrative and story if the characters feel something about what they're saying. And it's very easy to tell that all of these maidens feel very strongly for Bunthorne. We haven't yet met Patience, but that is fine. I think that this scene does narrative very successfully. I've given it a 10 out of 10 for narrative. I've also given it a 9 out of 10 for character. It introduces the character of the chorus really well, or rather it continues introducing the chorus from their fantastic opening number, which does that extremely well. And then when Lady Jane comes on, we really get to see who she is from that last little monologue that she has. Oh, Reginald, if only you could see what love is stored up in this rugged old bosom of mine, the milkmaid's triumph would be short indeed. What a great line that is. I think that's a fabulous line. So I gave this a 9 out of 10 for the way it introduces us to the characters. So yeah, my marks out of 10 for character refer to either how well a character is introduced or just how well that character is reinforced by the scene, or just how well the scene is written with that character's characteristics in mind. So if a person were to say something just really random and out of character purely to progress the narrative, it would get marked down for character. But this scene does both character and narrative very well, so I consider it to be very successful. Beauty poetry, I gave it an 8. Again, I think compared to some of the scenes that I've marked really highly in other operas, it might even get higher than that. But sadly, I just know that because there's so much better stuff coming in this opera, I've given this one an 8. But the language is absolutely beautiful. He, the very cynosure of our eyes and hearts, remains icy and sensible. What have we to strive for? It is absolutely beautiful language, and it's almost incomprehensible. I don't even know if I said cynosure right. I don't even know what cynosure means, but I'm delivering it as if I do. And I've directed this show. That's why I'm naughty. But it's almost incomprehensible, but in this case, the more incomprehensible this language is, and the more conviction with which this language is delivered, the more successful this scene is. I find this absolutely hilarious. I love this scene. Really cracking opening scene. It's got 42 out of 50 in my kind of tentative new Patience scoring system, which I'll probably also use for the ones coming up. But yeah, absolutely love this scene. It's done very well in my book.
Ah, Patience, if you have never loved, you have never known true happiness.
But the truly happy always seem to have so much on their minds. The truly happy never seem quite well.
There is a transcendentality of delirium, an acute accentuation of supremest ecstasy, which the earthy might easily mistake for indigestion, but it is not indigestion, it is aesthetic transfiguration. Enough of babble, come.
But stay, I have news for you. The 35th Dragoon Guards have halted in the village and are even now on their way to this very spot.
The 35th Dragoon Guards. They are fleshly men of full habit. We care nothing for Dragoon Guards.
But, bless me, you were all engaged to them a year ago.
A year ago? My poor child, you don't understand these things. A year ago they were very well in our eyes, but since then our tastes have been etherealized, our perceptions exalted. Come, it is time to lift up our voices in morning carol to our Reginald. Let us to his door.
I absolutely love some of the lines in this scene. To be honest, I love all of the lines in this scene, but the truly happy always seem to have so much on their minds. the truly happy never seem quite well. Here we start to understand Patience's misunderstanding of what love is. She sees other people being in what they call love and assumes that that's what love is. And as it turns out, that's not love at all. When she meets Archibald Grosvenor and falls in love, that is love. But she is under this impression that love involves being in tremendous pain and being very emotional and dramatic and artistic about it. And all of these ladies are being so patronising to her. And what's so good about it is it makes the audience feel intelligent. It makes the audience feel like they've been let in on a secret, because they are kind of viewing this show through Patience's eyes. And that actually, for me, makes Patience not a terribly satisfying character to play, because she's really an observer of everything. There is a transcendentality of delirium, an acute accentuation of supremist ecstasy, which the earthy might easily mistake for indigestion. But it is not indigestion. It is aesthetic transfiguration. That is an incredible line. I absolutely love that line. I think my favourite thing about it is the fact that he doesn't just leave it as might easily mistake for indigestion. He says, but it is not indigestion. Gilbert really loves to labour jokes in such a way that in other forms and other pieces that might seem a bit cringy, but for some reason when he does it, it works. It's full of such conviction, it's full of such earnestness, and you can really truly believe that these characters exist. They are written so well, and a lot of these characters are just chorus principals as well, but what they say just comes off the page in a way that not many characters so far have for me. Maybe Dr. Daly, but honestly, even the chorus principals here seem to me more fully realised and vibrant and understandable characters than some of the principal characters and the ones we've previously been discussing. They are fleshly men of full habit. We get nothing from Dragoon Guards. They are fleshly men of full habit. What does that mean? A year ago, they were very well in our eyes. It's so patronising. I absolutely love this scene. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for comedy. Another 8 out of 10 for BG/poetry. I only do give it a 7 for character because I feel that we don't really get a ton more character from the chorus principals and Jane in this scene that we didn't really get in the previous scene. And although Patience is a great character, she doesn't come off the page in the way that I think some of the others do. I think Patience is actually quite a hard character to play. As I was saying, because she is an observer, she's not quite so obvious how to play as an actor. And it's not quite clear why she thinks the way she does and why she's different. And so for that, just because her character isn't as well formed, I'd only give her a 7. I also gave this scene a 7 for narrative importance. I do appreciate that the story is ticking along, but I don't think it's done a magnificent job of progressing the story. It's a relatively short scene, so I could only really give it a 7. I also gave it a 7 for emotional dramatic stakes, because while the previous scene I think I gave an 8 to, I didn't say that, but this I don't feel is as emotional/dramatic. I don't think that we really even know these ladies truly are going through a kind of display of emotion. I don't know if they genuinely feel it. They probably do to some extent, but I just feel like they're missing something. They're getting something wrong. They can flip so easily between love for Bunthorne and love for Grosvenor, and then falling out of love for Grosvenor. It makes you feel like their emotions here can't be that genuine. But I do appreciate that a lot of emotions are on display, and for that, I do give it a 7. Very funny scene, but it actually didn't do quite as well as the opening scene.
Well, here we are once more on the scene of our former triumphs, but where's the Duke?
Here I am.
Come, cheer up, don't give way.
Over that. I'm as cheerful as a poor devil can be expected to be who has the misfortune to be a duke with 1,000 a day.
Humph, most men would envy you.
Envy me? Tell me, Major, are you fond of toffee?
Very. We are all fond of toffee. We are.
Yes, and toffee in moderation is a capital thing, but to live on toffee, toffee for breakfast, toffee for dinner, toffee for tea, to have it supposed that you care for nothing but toffee, and that you would consider yourself insulted if anything but toffee were offered to you. How would you like that?
I can quite believe that, under those circumstances, even toffee would become monotonous.
But for toffee, read flattery, adulation, and abject deference, carried to such a pitch that I began at last to think that a man was born bent at an angle of 45 degrees. Great heavens, what is there to adulate in me? Am I particularly intelligent, or remarkably studious, or excruciatingly witty, or unusually accomplished, or exceptionally virtuous?
You're about as commonplace a young man as ever I saw. You are.
Exactly. That describes me to a T. Thank you all very much. Well, I couldn't stand it any longer, so I joined a second-class cavalry regiment. In the army, thought I shall be occasionally snubbed, perhaps even bullied. Who knows? The thought was rapture. And here I am.
Yes. And here are the ladies.
But who is the gentleman with the long hair?
I don't know.
He seems popular.
He does seem popular.
This scene is one of my favourite scenes that I've discussed so far in terms of how it develops a single character. And I did mention this in my tenors video, that you get such a better idea of what kind of character the Duke is after the tiny amount of material he has in this opera than you do about some of the huge tenor roles. Even Fairfax, Frederick, Rafe. You really get who the Duke is instantly. And I find myself reading his lines in a really, really posh voice, which I find really funny. So posh, it's almost incomprehensible, but not incomprehensible enough that the words can't be heard. We really got into, when we were doing this the other year, pronouncing all the E's like eh, so that describes me to a tear. And David Woods, who was on my tenors video, he played that part so well. And it was him that really made me realise just how funny this role is. But the whole speech about Toffee is just so vivid. There's such incredible imagery in there. And the fact that the men interject when they do, we are all fond of Toffee. We are. How ludicrous is it that these men just appear and then have this conversation about Toffee as a metaphor for adulation? I think it's wonderful. It's so utterly whimsical and ludicrous and topsy-turvy. And this is exactly why I love Gilbert, this scene. I only gave it a 7 for narrative importance because even though we are learning very vividly about this character, and we do hear about how they've arrived to claim the ladies who they're engaged to, and they do mention that they see Bunthorne coming, it really is mainly about the Duke, and so the main narrative of the story kind of takes a backseat temporarily, but I did give it a 7 because it's certainly not obstructing to the narrative in any way. And I think that learning about who these men are is actually really helpful overall to the story. I gave this a 10 out of 10 for comedy. I love this scene. Absolutely love it. I find it hysterical. I don't think I've ever seen this scene and not laughed out loud many, 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 many times. I gave it a 7 for beauty/poetry. I don't think it's one of the strongest in that category, but hey, this is Patience. All the scenes are beautiful. There's such poetry everywhere. I also only gave it a 6 for emotional dramatic stakes because I don't really see too much genuine emotion going on here. It's not terribly dramatic, but that's also not necessarily a drawback either, because in some of these operas, the comedy comes from the fact that really high stakes situations are made out to be quite matter of fact.
And it's just hilarious to me that they pause the story and they've arrived back to do something very big. That's claim these maidens in marriage. They've arrived back to do something very big with their lives, and they're just stuck in this conversation about Toffee. It's perfect. It's perfect to me. I love it.
Angela, what is the meaning of this?
Oh, sir, leave us. Our minds are but ill-tuned to light love talk.
But what in the world has come over you all?
Bunthorne, he has come over us. He has come among us, and he has idealized us.
Has he succeeded in idealizing you?
He has.
Good old Bunthorne.
My eyes are open. I droop despairingly. I am soulfully intense. I am limp, and I cling.
Finished. Last. Finished. Are you better now? Yes. Oh, it's you. I am better now. The poem is finished, and my soul has gone out into it. That was all. It was nothing worth mentioning. It occurs 3 times a day. Patience. Dear patience.
Will it please you read it to us, sir? This we supplicate.
Shall I? No. I will read it if you bid me.
You can if you like.
It is a wild, weird, fleshly thing, yet very tender, very yearning, very precious. It is called Oh, Hollow, Hollow, Hollow.
Is it a hunting song?
A hunting song. No, this is not a hunting song. It is the wail of a poet's heart upon discovering that everything is commonplace. To understand it, cling passionately to one another and think of faint lilies. Oh, hollow, hollow, hollow. What time the poet has him the writhing maid, light-limbed, quivering on amaranthine asphodel. How can he paint her woes, knowing as well he knows that all can be set right with calomel? When from the poet's print the amorous colocynth yearns for the aloe faint with rapturous thrills, how can he hymn their throes, knowing as well he knows that they are only uncompounded pills? Is it, and can it be, nature hath this decree nothing poetic in the world shall dwell? Or that in all her works something poetic lurks even in colocynth and calomel? I cannot tell.
Oh, how purely fragrant, how earnestly precious. Well, it seems to me to be nonsense. Nonsense, yes, perhaps, but oh, what precious nonsense.
This is all very well, but you seem to forget that you are engaged to us.
It can never be. You are not Empyrean. You are not Della Cruscan. You are not even early English. Oh, be early English ere it is too late. Red and yellow, primary colours. Oh, South Kensington.
We didn't design our uniforms, but we don't see how they could be improved.
No, you wouldn't. Still, there is a cobwebby grey velvet with a tender bloom like cold gravy, which, made Florentine 14th century, trimmed with Venetian leather and Spanish altar lace, and surmounted with something Japanese, it matters not what, would at least be early English. Come, maidens.
Gentlemen, this is an insult to the British uniform. A uniform that has been as successful in the courts of Venus as on the field of Mars.
I very successfully hid there. I think no one even knew that I'd left the scene. This is a great scene. Automatically, I would have to give it a 10 out of 10 for beauty/poetry. I think that is dealt with really well. I would only probably give it a 7 for character, because we don't really learn anything new about anybody, and you kind of get to know Bunthorne, but I feel like you only really get to know him a bit later. This poem is completely incomprehensible. I have no idea what this poem is about. I don't know if it really is meant to be about anything. That's probably something that might be in the Bradley, but I don't have the Bradley here because I'm in a hotel. I only also gave it a 7 for emotional/dramatic stakes. I don't think, again, it's particularly emotional. I gave it an 8 for comedy. I think that the poem is quite funny, but I'm just thinking ahead to how funny Grosvenor's poems are, and I just don't really feel they match up to that quite in comedy. Just going to give an honourable mention to some lines that I absolutely love. Bunthorne, he has come over us. He has come among us, and he has idealised us. And I know that you're all going to be thinking that I find it funny because it sounds a bit rude, and I do. That is part of the reason why I find it funny. But even rudeness aside, it is still a very funny line. Like, what has come over us all? Bunthorne, he has come over us all. It is just a ridiculous thing to say. Nobody in real life speaks like this, yet this kind of acting, it actually comes very naturally to people, which is so surprising, because you'd think, wouldn't you, that it would be easier to be natural on stage and be more like you are in real life. But I find that most people that I direct find it easier when they're given something very, very dramatic to do, when they're given permission to be this free and open and this exuberant. But if I tell them to be as exuberant when they're playing more normal characters, they don't seem to be able to do it so easily. But these lines are just an absolute gift, and that's why I'm just going to keep going on about how wonderful these lines are. Good old Bunthorne. Every line is just written so well for each character. Duke, Jane, Angela, Sophia, like all of these characters are so pronounced. I wouldn't say that Angela and Sophia are particularly different from each other, but they're both incredible characters. Yeah, so the reason I think I didn't give this scene higher than I did is because I really do think it depends on the actor playing Bunthorne as to how funny that poem is. You usually see it being taken in a very specific direction. I'm happy that Will did it a little bit differently. I didn't actually ask Will this, but I imagine he was doing it in a similar way to how he did it when he played Bunthorne for Blue Hill Troop, because I know that was set in the 60s. Interestingly enough, the Blue Hill Troop patients that came to the festival in, I think it was 2015 or 16? 2015, I think it was. That Blue Hill Troop Patience remains to this day to be the best GNS production I have ever seen. And I imagine, coming from me, that is quite high praise, because I have seen many GNS shows, but that one remains to this day my absolute favourite. And I didn't see William as Bunthorne, I actually saw somebody else because they had 2 casts, but William did play Bunthorne in that production, and they played it with this 60s beatnik kind of vibe. So it is different to what people are used to seeing, but I'm really glad that Will gave us that slightly different interpretation. This scene still did really well. I gave it a 41 out of 50. It's one of those big scenes where pretty much all the characters have been introduced. I think everyone apart from Grosvenor has been introduced at this point. And now they're all together in one place. So there's not really too much scope for developing character, which is why it gets a relatively low character score. I mean, it still gets a 7, it's pretty good. But we really get to see these characters sit together. We get to start seeing things cooking and how everyone's vibing, and it just makes for such a good time.
Ah, Patience. Come hither, I am pleased with thee. The bitter-hearted one who finds all else hollow is pleased with thee. For you are not hollow, are you?
No thanks, I have dined. But I beg your pardon, I interrupt you.
Life is made up of interruptions, the tortured heart yearning for solitude writhes. Under them, oh, but my heart is weary. Oh, I am a cursed thing. Don't go.
Really, I'm very sorry.
Tell me, girl, do you ever yearn?
I earn my living.
No. Do you know what it is to be heart-hungry? Do you know what it is to yearn for the indefinable and yet to be brought face to face daily with the multiplication table? Do you know what it is to seek oceans and find paddles? To long for whirlwinds, and yet you have to do the best you can with the bellows. That's my case. Oh, I am a cursed thing. Don't go.
If you please, I don't understand you. You frighten me.
Don't be frightened. It's only poetry.
Well, if that's poetry, I don't like poetry.
Don't you? Can I trust her? Patience, you don't like poetry. Well, between you and me, I don't like poetry. It's hollow, unsubstantial, unsatisfactory. What's the use of yearning for Elysian fields when you know you can't get them and would only let them out on building leases if you had them?
Sir,
Patience, I have long loved you. Let me tell you a secret. I'm not as bilious as I look. If you like, I will cut my hair. There's more innocent fun within me than a casual spectator would imagine. You've never seen me frolicsome. Be a good girl, a very good girl, and one day you shall. If you are fond of touch-and-go jocularity, this is the shop for it.
Sir, I will speak plainly. In a matter of love, I am untaught. I've never loved but my great aunt. But I am quite certain that under any circumstances, I couldn't possibly love you.
Oh, you think not?
I'm quite sure of it. Quite sure. Quite.
Very good. Life is henceforth a blank. I don't care what becomes of me. I have only to ask that you will not abuse my confidence, though you despise me. I am extremely popular with the other young ladies.
I only ask that you will leave me and never renew the subject.
Certainly. Broken-hearted and desolate, I go. Oh, to be wafted away from this black echodrama of sorrow, where the dust of an earthy today is the earth of a dusty tomorrow. It is a little thing of my own. I call it heart foam. I shall not publish it. Farewell, Patience. Patience. Farewell.
What on earth does it all mean? Why does he love me? Why does he expect me to love him? He's not a relation. It frightens me.
Why, Patience, what is the matter?
Lady Angela, tell me two things. Firstly, what on earth is this love that upsets everybody? And secondly, how is it to be distinguished from insanity?
poor blind child, oh, forgive her, Eros. Why, love is of all the passions the most essential. It is the embodiment of purity, the abstraction of refinement. It is the one unselfish emotion in this whirlpool of grasping greed.
Oh dear. Oh,
Why are you crying?
to think that I have lived all these years without having experienced this ennobling and unselfish passion. Why, what a wicked girl I must be. For it is unselfish, isn't it?
Absolutely. Love that is tainted with selfishness is no love. Oh, try to love. It really isn't difficult if you give your mind to it.
I'll set about it at once. I won't go to bed until I'm head over ears in love with somebody.
Noble girl. But is it possible that you have never loved anybody?
Yes, one.
Ah, whom?
My great aunt.
Great aunts don't count.
Then there's nobody. At least... No, nobody. Not since I was a baby, but that doesn't count, I suppose.
I don't know. Tell me all about it.
Again, absolutely love this scene. This is quite a long one. I kind of think of it really as two scenes, but I'm going to discuss it as one scene. First of all, I do find it hilarious. I gave it a 9 for comedy. I don't think it's quite as funny, maybe, in total, as the scene with the Duke and the Dragoons. But that's just because that scene is just so neat and perfect and every single tiny bit of it is funny. Whereas this scene, I don't feel Patience is as funny as Bunthorne or Angela. That's actually one of my issues with playing Patience. Because she's the straight man, she isn't actually as interesting or as intuitive to play as some of the other characters. I actually found myself just then, when me and Will were reading it, that I was like laughing awkwardly when I was saying, "Ooh, this frightens me," because it's very difficult to genuinely act as if that is frightening. Because if you really were in that situation where somebody was just being weird, you wouldn't be like, "Oh no," you wouldn't. You'd be trying to get out of that situation, and it's more of a kind of awkwardness and just like, oh, social paralysis. And so that's what comes naturally when I play it. But it's quite difficult to transition from that into speaking to Angela and then to actually be genuinely upset about it. So even though I have given this an 8 out of 10 for emotional / dramatic stakes, I do though find that it's not particularly clear exactly why she's upset, but I do recognise there's a ton of funny lines in this. I earn my living, no thanks, I have dined. My favourite bit of this is Bunthorne's kind of aborted exit when you think he's gone. It's like, oh, to be wafted away. When I played Patience, that was just hilarious. When the guy kind of suddenly just came back on saying that. And yes, again, Will did that by walking around the kitchen table. I managed to keep a straight face in this scene though, which I was impressed about. And Angela's like, oh, forgive her, Eros. Again, Angela to me is such a great character. Angela Sophia really, really well fleshed out parts. But Patience, maybe not so much. I do like her lines and I like playing her, but she isn't the funniest or almost intuitive character. And in a play that is entitled Patience, where she's the only character that's not particularly laugh out loud funny, apart from for some lines, people always do laugh at that line, why does he love me? He's not a relation. Like, people do laugh at that, but I don't personally find that hilarious. And in the no thanks I have done, yeah, it's good. But to me, Bunthorne's a really like scene stealing part in this show so far. He is the funniest character we've seen. But also, the chorus principal characters are really funny too. But Bunthorne's poem, where the dust of an earthy today is the earth of a dusty tomorrow. And that is genuinely really good poetry. I actually really like that poem. I think it's really clever. And I know it's meant to be really pretentious. It's meant to be something that's actually bad poetry, but I quite like it. Maybe that makes me basic. I don't know. So, yeah, I do love this scene.
I'm prepared that some better ones are coming up, but still, all of these so far have been really strong, really funny. It just comes off the page in a way that Pinafore and Pirates and Sorcerer haven't quite managed to do yet. They've got very funny lines, but there's something about this dialogue that to me is a really clear level up, especially from Pirates, but also even from Pinafore and Sorcerer. They have just cranked everything really up a level for this opera, and it's very difficult to distinguish between these things because they're all so funny. They've all got utter gems in things that I quote daily. Absolutely love it.
It's perfectly dreadful to think of the appalling state I must be in. I had no idea that love was a duty. No wonder they all look so unhappy. Upon my word, I hardly like to associate with myself. I don't think I'm respectable. I'll go at once and fall in love with a stranger.
Patience! Can it be that you don't recognize me?
Recognise you? No, I don't.
Have 15 years so greatly changed me?
15 years? What do you mean?
Have you forgotten the friend of your youth, your Archibald, your little playfellow? Oh, Kronos, this is too bad of you.
Archibald? Is it possible? What? Well, let me look. It is. It is. It must be. Oh, how happy I am. I thought we should never meet again. And how you've grown.
Yes, Patience. I am much taller and much stouter than I was.
And how you've improved.
Yes, Patience. I am very beautiful.
But surely that doesn't make you unhappy.
Yes, Patience, gifted as I am with a beauty which probably has not its rival on earth, I am nevertheless utterly and completely miserable.
Oh. But why?
My child love for you has never faded. Conceive then the horror of my situation when I tell you that it is my hideous destiny to be madly loved at first sight by every woman I come across.
But why make yourself so picturesque? Why not disguise yourself, disfigure yourself, anything to escape this persecution?
No, Patience. That may not be. These gifts, irksome as they are, were given to me for the enjoyment and delectation of my fellow creatures. I am a trustee for beauty, and it is the duty to see that the conditions of my trust are faithfully discharged.
And you too are a poet.
Yes, I am the apostle of simplicity. I am called Archibald the All-Right, for I am infallible.
And is it possible that you condescended to love such a girl as I?
Yes, Patience, is it not strange? I have loved you with a Florentine 14th century frenzy for full 15 years.
Oh, marvellous! I have hitherto been deaf to the voice of love. I seem now to know what love is. It has been revealed to me. It is Archibald Grosvenor.
Yes, Patience, it is.
We will never, never part.
We will live and die together.
I swear it.
We both swear it.
But oh, horror!
What's the matter?
Why, you are perfection. A source of endless ecstasy to all who know you.
I know I am. Well?
Then bless my heart, there can be nothing unselfish in loving you.
Merciful powers, I never thought of that.
To monopolise on those features which all women love to linger, it would be unpardonable.
Why, so it would. Oh, fatal perfection, again you interpose between me and my happiness.
Oh, but if you were but a thought less beautiful than you are.
Would that I were. But candour compels me to admit that I'm not.
Our duty is clear. We must part, and forever.
Oh, misery. And yet I cannot question the propriety of your decision. Farewell, Patience.
Farewell, Archibald. But stay!
Yes, Patience.
Although I may not love you, for you are perfection, There is nothing to prevent your loving me. I am plain, homely, unattractive.
Why, that's true!
The love of such a man as you for such a girl as I must be unselfish.
Unselfishness itself.
Oh. Okay, right. I have a sneaking suspicion that this scene is going to make it to my top 10 scenes. I adore this scene. Everything in it is so good, so clever. 10 out of 10 for comedy. The number of really laugh out loud funny lines relative to the number of lines in the scene is extraordinary. I have loved you with the Florentine 14th century frenzy for full 15 years. What a ridiculous line. Everything in this is sublime. Gifted as I am with a beauty which probably has not its rival on earth, I am nevertheless utterly and completely miserable. You see, I've seen people play Grosvenor where he's very stuck up and knowing about this. But to me, this has to be played utterly innocently. Grosvenor completely believes everything he's saying. And it's not said out of some kind of smugness or arrogance. It's just a fact. Oh, I am just very beautiful. This is a thing that I think that a lot of people don't really get about Gilbert and Sullivan. They read a character like this and think, oh, well, if I were to say that, that would be a really arrogant or smug thing for me to say. But these characters aren't conventional people. These characters are extremes of things. And the task, I think, for anybody acting in a Gilbert and Sullivan show isn't to try and put some crazy interpretation on a character. The task is to look at the lines and say them as if they are truth, as if they are fact. And yes, some characters are manipulative. Bunthorne, for one. Gosh, Bunthorne's a very, very manipulative character. But I do not believe there is a manipulative bone in Grosvenor's body. Grosvenor and Patience here. This is not only wholesome, it is hilarious. It is even quite sad. It's emotional. I only gave it an 8 out of 10 for emotional dramatic state because I appreciate that we've not yet reached the heights of emotion yet in this piece. I think we do in a future scene, but this scene did still get a 46 out of 50. I gave it a 10 for narrative importance, obviously. We meet Grosvenor, we learn all about their childhood, we understand now why it is that Patience hadn't loved before. It was because she was somehow subconsciously waiting for Grosvenor to come along. That's why he's called Patience. I gave it a 10 out of 10 for character. For once, I don't think Patience has particularly leapt off the page so far, but now she does. Now she really comes alive. We learn who she is. We see who she is when she loves. And it's very interesting that what I was saying about how exposition being delivered with emotion is so much easier to understand, and in that way it's so much easier to see characters and see who they are when they're feeling something. And there's no exception to that here. When you see how Patience is talking to a person that she really, really loves, you suddenly see who she is and you just get this glimpse inside of her, and the earnestness with which they both speak to each other. And we must part on forever, yes, farewell. But stay, yes, Patience. There is nothing to prevent your loving me. I'm plain, homely, unattractive. Well, that's true. Because it's said with such joy. Like, yes, that's true, you are unattractive, but it's not meant to be an insult. This is joy. They are both so happy to realise that she is unattractive, and the thing is, it's quite funny, because Patience is never unattractive. The person who played my Grosvenor, whose name is Jenny, one of the most fantastic performers I've ever worked with. She also played Elsie for me in Yeoman of the Guard. But she played Patience in another production at the same time I was playing Patience, actually. And as I was doing it in quite a conventional way, I was dressed up very prettily and was, you know, had the nice hair and the cap and looked very charming. But she was just wearing like a dirty apron that had like mess on her face and her hair wasn't done. And that was so good. Like, what a great choice that was. That was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Not saying that it's not valid to do her the way I did it, but it was so good to see a character done in that way, because she really, you know, it's silly because Jenny is an absolutely stunning person, but in this play she did not look her best because she was made to look a mess, and it really did work very well, and that was very funny. 10 out of 10 for comedy. Honestly, just this scene is utter gold. I am absolutely enraptured by both of these characters, and this is one of my favourite scenes to read. It was a privilege and a joy to do this with William Remmers for real in 2018. That's when we performed Patience with Savoy Net, so you can check that out on GS Opera TV if you haven't seen it already. But we loved doing this scene so much. Oh, but if you were a thought less beautiful than you were. Would that I were, but candour compels me to admit that I am not. So yeah, this scene, absolutely in love with it. This is one of my favourite scenes in the canon, certainly one of the most vivid scenes in terms of character, and just one of my most beloved scenes. So even though I have given it a 10 out of 10 for comedy, I imagine there's some that I find funnier than this, but this just has this perfect mix of comedy, pathos, genuine emotional stakes, and also just GNS style ludicrousness. Really across the board here. Such a fantastic scene.
The fickle crew have deserted Reginald and sworn allegiance to his rival, and all, forsooth, because he has glanced with passing favour on a puling milkmaid. Fools! Of that fancy he was soon weary, and then I, who alone am faithful to him, shall reap my reward. But do not dally too long, Reginald, for my charms are ripe, Reginald, and already they are decaying. Better secure me ere I have gone too far.
So ordinarily, I wouldn't include a scene that was as short as this in these videos, but this little section here is so iconic I had to include it. I imagine it'll probably come last place just based on the fact that it's so short, and I think every scene in this show is utterly iconic and brilliant, and nothing is going to score even remotely low. So this one, just in virtue of it being short, probably won't do so well, but I had to include it because I just think it is such a charming little character study. Lady Jane is one of my favourite alto characters. I believe she came third in my alto characters list, behind the Alto and the Mikado and the Fairy Queen. Lady Jane, she has so little material comparative to some of the other characters, but what she does have is tremendous. And this scene is beautiful. She goes from delivering this very grandiose, very funny dialogue, and I gave it a 7 for comedy, even though it's so short. This very grandiose, funny dialogue, and then she transitions very subtly into something which is actually very poignant. So yes, I will reap my reward. And she's very confident, you know, she's very much certain that she is going to get what she is entitled to, but do not dally too long, Reginald. No. She does have vulnerability there. And it's so amazing that Gilbert was able to do this, to kind of create these characters that can actually pull the audience in. And Jane, up until this point, hasn't been a particularly sympathetic character, but yet she manages to just pull the audience into her and just display herself to them in a way that I don't know if too many characters are like this in other shows. Maybe I'm just psychically connected to the characters of Gilbert and Sullivan in a way that I'm not in other operas or in other plays, but Lady Jane to me in this scene just opens herself up in a way that If this is delivered in a certain way, I would cry. I would laugh and then I would cry. 8 out of 10 for beauty/poetry. It's short, but it is beautiful. I think the poetry in this little section is just gorgeous. 8 out of 10 for character. I love the way this progresses her character. We haven't really heard too much from her so far, so this is her really telling us, this is what I think after this has happened, and she delivers actually that exposition of the second act in a very good way. The fickle crew have deserted Reginald, but I am still faithful to him. So she is telling us what's happened in a very good way, in a way that is emotional, in a way that is comic. How skillfully done, Gilbert. I wish you were alive so I could tell you how good this is. 7 out of 10 for narrative importance. Yeah, I do appreciate it does do narrative very well, but it's just too short for me to give it more than that. Emotional dramatic stakes, again, a 7. But you know what? Even though it's so short, so I can't really give it much more than that, this little bit here could be tremendously poignant.
The old tale. How rapturously these maidens love me, and how hopelessly. Oh, patience, patience. But the love of thee in my heart, what have I for these poor, mad maidens but an unvalued pity? Alas, they will die of hopeless love for me, as I shall die of hopeless love for thee.
Sir, will it please you read to us?
Yes, child, if you will, what shall I read?
One of your own poems.
One of my own poems? Better not, my child, they will not cure thee of thy love.
Mr. Bunthorne used to read us a poem of his own every day. And, to do him justice, he read them extremely well.
Ah, did he so? Well, who am I that I should take upon myself to withhold my gifts from you? What am I but a trustee? Here is a decollete. A pure and simple thing, a very daisy. A babe might understand it. To appreciate it, it is not necessary to think of anything at all.
Let us think of nothing at all.
Gentle Jane was as good as gold. She always did as she was told. She never spoke when her mouth was full, or caught blue bottles their legs to pull, or spilled plum jam on a nice new frock, or put white mice in the 8-day clock, or vivisected her last new doll, or fostered a passion for alcohol. And when she grew up, she was given in marriage to a first-class earl who keeps his carriage. I believe I am right in saying that there is not one word in that decollete which is calculated to bring the blush of shame to the cheek of modesty.
Not one. It is purity itself.
Here's another. Teasing Tom was a very bad boy. A great big squirt was his favorite toy. He put live shrimps in his father's boots and sewed up the sleeves of his Sunday suits. He punched his poor little sisters' heads and cayenne peppered their 4-post beds. He plastered the hair with cobbler's wax and dropped hot halfpennies down their backs. The consequence was he was lost totally and married a girl in the Corps de Ballet.
Marked you how grandly, how relentlessly the damning catalogue of crime strode on, till retribution, like a poised hawk, came swooping down upon a wrongdoer. Oh, it was terrible. Oh, sir, you are indeed a true poet, for you touch our hearts and they go out to you.
This is simply cloying. Ladies, I am sorry to appear ungallant, but this is Saturday, and you have been following me about ever since Monday. I should like the usual half-holiday. I shall take it as a personal favor if you will kindly allow me to close early today.
Oh, sir, do not send us from you.
Poor girls, it is best to speak plainly. I know that I am loved by you, but I never can love you in return. My heart is fixed elsewhere. Remember the fable of the magnet and the churn.
But we don't know the fable of the magnet and the churn.
Don't you?
No. Is there actually a no? There's no. I'll just put one in. But we don't.
Remember the fable of the magnet and the churn.
But we don't know the fable of the magnet and the churn.
Don't you? Then I will sing it to you.
It's too funny.
It's a good scene. Do you know?
That is literally too funny for me to even get through. I have only been in the chorus of that back when I was quite young. So when I was 19. And I don't really. I think I just didn't really understand the humour of it enough to find it funny. But
oh
my god, I don't know how anyone on the stage when Will was Grosvenor got through that scene.
Oh yeah, because
I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, that was fun.
Because you didn't tell them you were going to do that. That was just completely improvised, wasn't it?
Oh well, the way the way I did it then was like I just made it scan badly. It was like
I think you said chord-doubly at one point.
Yeah, like it just
he was lost totally and married a girl in a chord-doubly.
Like he forced to rhyme and then forgot to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he just maybe it's laying it on too thick if the delivery is also bad, but it's fun to try differently. My favorite line in this scene is Angela's reaction, that her summation of that second poem is so brilliant because like the way they think about Bunthorne's poems and the way they think about these, they're both like they don't notice the difference.
Yeah.
And she's like,
it's that and like I just realised that the ladies are just like posh society ladies. They're very posh. And they're just like, and they actually kind of in a way look down on Bunthorne and Grosvenor. Because they're like the staff.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're
actually, because they're actually quite patronising to them. This is really interesting. Ooh.
But Angela's line where she summarizes the story of teasing
yes.
a nursery
yes,
rhyme.
I love that.
This grand literary moment. It's really quite great.
So yeah, I actually kept the discussion that Will and I had after we read this scene. This was the only time I think we did that, but we just adore this scene. And I just couldn't keep a straight face. And also just to clarify what me and Will were saying at the end there, because I think I thought I was saying something that was adding to what he was saying, but I now realise he was actually making a different point, which was really good. I just completely misunderstood him. But his point that this poem that Grosvenor's written is awful. I mean, yeah, it scans, but it's so simple, and it's something that anyone really could have written. And while Bunthorne's poems are pretty incomprehensible, they are very beautifully written. There is beauty in there. So one is beauty without any meaning, and the other is just matter-of-factness without any beauty at all. So they're actually quite opposite of each other, Bunthorne and Grosvenor. But the ladies can't tell the difference, and they're just as impressed by Grosvenor's as they are with Bunthorne's. And to me, that is so true in society today. I find that people are impressed by stuff that isn't very good, and they can't tell the difference between good and very good. And this is certainly the case with me, because I hear that people come up to me and tell me that I'm very good, but I also hear people saying that other people are very good who aren't nearly as good as me. And I think that when somebody isn't a singer or doesn't know much about singing, somebody who just has a voice is just as impressive as somebody who is as good as me. And then similarly, I can understand that there's a huge difference between somebody of my level and somebody who's been through a conservatoire and who has a proper operatic voice. So there's also a big divide there, and I can hear that, but other people can't. So some people will say, to me, oh no, you're just as good as these people who have who sing at the Met. I'm like, no, I'm not actually as good as that. So I do think that when you are removed from an art form, it is difficult to understand what level a person is. But The confidence with which these ladies think that they understand the level of this poetry is hilarious. And I wanted to address how good Will's point is, that they can't tell the difference, and that is hilarious. But also to address the point I made, that hadn't really occurred to me, that these maidens are very posh and actually quite patronising, and in a way they kind of look down on Bunthorne and Grosvenor. I think that's quite interesting, and that's something I hadn't considered before. So they feel entitled to Grosvenor, and Grosvenor has to ask politely to be allowed to have a moment's peace. And that's pretty messed up if you think about it. So yeah, anyway, this scene, an obvious 10 out of 10 for comedy. I also gave it a 9 out of 10 for beauty/poetry. Naturally, I don't think it is quite as beautiful as the scenes with Bunthorne's poetry, because it's a very different kind of poetry. But as Will alluded to, that line that Angela says, retribution like a poised hawk, that is a beautiful line. There's some gorgeous poetry in this scene, bizarrely not said by the poet himself. Character, I gave it an 8. I think that Grosvenor is upholding his character very well. The chorus are upholding their characters very well. We're not getting too much progression, but we are certainly seeing them representing themselves very well. I gave it a 9 for narrative importance. It is important for us to see the reality of Grosvenor's life now and how fickle these women are, as Lady Jane has said, with switching allegiance to Grosvenor. It's really important that we do see that for the plot, so I appreciate the importance of this scene narratively. Emotionally, I only gave it a 7 for obvious reasons. You don't really see too much real emotion going on here. The ladies are very sad to be sent away from Grosvenor, but I don't think we as an audience are sad for that. We are more feeling sorry for Grosvenor because he can't be with Patience. In fact, I'd say that beginning monologue is probably the most poignant bit of the whole thing. The old, old tale. How rapturously these maidens love me, and how hopelessly. Oh, Patience, Patience, for the love of thee in my heart, what have I for these poor mad maidens but an unvalued pity? Alas, they will die of hopeless love for me, as I shall die of hopeless love for thee. It's beautiful. It's really very nice. And there's a tremendous amount of poignancy in that line. That I don't think people appreciate how much poignancy Patience has, and this is just lovely. Grosvenor is a very sweet character. And this is a lovely, lovely scene.
At last they are gone. What is this mysterious fascination that I seem to exercise over all I come across? A curse on my fatal beauty, for I am sick of conquests.
Archibald,
Patience.
I have escaped with difficulty from my Reginald. I wanted to see you so much that I might ask you if you still love me as fondly as ever.
Love you. If the devotion of a lifetime...
Hold. Unhand me, or I scream. If you are a gentleman, pray remember that I am another's. But you still love me, don't you?
Madly, hopelessly, despairingly.
That's right. I never can be yours, but that's right.
And you love this Bunthorne?
With a heart-whole ecstasy that withers and scorches and burns and stings. It is my duty.
Admirable girl. But you are not happy with him.
Happy? I am miserable beyond description.
That's right. I never can be yours, but that's right.
But go now. I see dear Reginald approaching. Farewell, dear Archibald. I cannot tell you how happy it has made me to know that you still love me.
If I only dared.
Sir! This language to one who was promised to another. Oh, Archibald, think of me sometimes, for my heart is breaking. He is so unkind to me, and you would be so loving.
Loving?
Advance one step, and as I am a good and pure woman, I scream. Farewell, Archibald. Stop there. Think of me sometimes. Advance at your peril. Once more. Adieu.
In a doleful train, one and one I walk all day, for I love in vain none so sorrowful as they, who can only sigh and say, woe is me, alack a day, woe is me, alack a day.
Crying, eh? What are you crying about?
I've only been thinking how dearly I love you.
Love me? Bah.
Love him? Bah!
Don't you interfere.
He always crushes me.
What is the matter, dear Reginald? If you have any sorrow, tell it to me that I may share it with you. It is my duty.
Whom were you talking with just now?
With dear Archibald.
With dear Archibald. Upon my honour, this is too much.
A great deal too much.
Do be quiet.
Crushed again?
I think he is the noblest, purest, and most perfect being I have ever met. But I don't love him. It is true that he is devotedly attached to me, but indeed I don't love him. Whenever he grows affectionate, I scream. It is my duty.
I dare say.
So do I dare say.
Why, how could I love him and love you too? You can't love two people at once.
Oh, can't you, though?
No, you can't. I only wish you could.
I don't believe you know what love is.
Yes, I do. There was a happy time when I didn't, but a bitter experience has taught me.
Wow, so this scene is a bit of a roller coaster. There is so much going on here. It gets a 10 out of 10 for emotional dramatic stakes. This I found to be one of the most intuitive scenes to act when I was playing Patience. And that bit with Grosvenor, even though it's ridiculous, with the stop there and advance at your peril, it's one of those moments in GNS where something can be hysterically funny and very tragic at exactly the same time. I imagine that people aren't truly absorbing the poignancy of it until Grosvenor leaves, but still, it's very rare that you can get a scene like that that makes you laugh and then instantly turns it around and makes it very sad. You can, and that's where the funniness comes from. That's where the comedy comes from. The fact that these characters are switching between these emotions so readily, but that's also quite real. That happens a lot to me in my real life. I will find myself crying and then laughing as I'm crying, and that is reality. And going back to what I was saying about the Pinafore dialogue that has Cousin Hebe in it, the bit that was cut and then has kind of sometimes been reinstated, and it usually is reinstated. It gives Hebe stuff to do, doesn't it? But it's employed so much better here. We have established exactly who Bunthorne and Jane are by this point. We've seen her coming in and singing, and it's so ludicrous that she is still keeping up this display, even though none of the other ladies are doing it. And Bunthorne by the stage, he's probably in a way grateful that she's still there, but simultaneously irritated. And he is definitely dropping his grandiose attitude because he just, oh, shut up, Jane, oh, stop it. And she just accepts it, like, he always crushes me, and she's just fine with that, even though she is a strong person. She is strong, independent, she is very sure of herself, and she's a clever person. She is still willing to have Bunthorne treat her in this way, which is quite interesting, but we are all fools when it comes to love. I gave this scene a 9 for comedy. I'm not sure it's quite as funny as the scene before it, but I do really, really appreciate that, especially the back and forth of Patience and Grosvenor, the advance your peril stop. You know, as I'm good and pure woman, I scream. I've never seen that done in a way that's not funny, and I'm on a constant quest to find the very, very funniest way of doing it, but I absolutely love that bit. 8 out of 10 for beauty/poetry. I gave it an 8 out of 10 for character. All of these characters have been introduced before, but they are all maintaining and upholding their characters extremely well. I don't think we really learn anything particularly new, but it's still very good to see these characters continue to be vivid. We actually do get to see Bunthorne progress a little bit because we see him coming very downtrodden, very irritated by Grosvenor's presence in his life. We get to see a bit more in the next scene, but it's starting to come to the surface here. Oh dear Archibald. 9 out of 10 for narrative importance. We go through a lot of stuff here. So Patience and Grosvenor remind us what their situation is. Patience and Bunthorne remind us what their situation is. Jane reminds us of her presence. We get to understand a little bit more about Patience's mental state. We are getting through a lot of stuff here that is story, and I appreciate that. 10 out of 10 for emotional dramatic stakes. What a beautiful scene. How poignant, how funny. These scenes are great. This may have the best dialogue. I always thought it was Mikado, and maybe it will turn out that it is Mikado, but honestly, Patience, all this dialogue so far has been so good, and it makes me so happy to talk about it. It's one of my favourite operas for dialogue, and I just love it.
Everything has gone wrong with me since that smug-faced idiot came here. And before that I was admired, I may say loved.
Too mild. Adored.
Do let a poet soliloquize. The damosels used to follow me wherever I went. Now they all follow him.
Not all. I am still faithful to you.
Yes, and a pretty damosel you are.
No, not pretty. Massive. Cheer up. I will never leave you. I swear it.
Oh, thank you. I know what it is. It's his confounded mildness. They find me too highly spiced, if you please, and no doubt I am highly spiced.
Not to my taste.
No, but I am for theirs. But I will show the world I can be as mild as he. If they want insipidity, they shall have it. I'll meet this fellow on his own ground and beat him on it.
You shall, and I will help you.
You will. Jane, there's a good deal of good in you after all.
So, Jane and Bunthorne. I don't suppose this scene can get too high of a mark because it is shorter than the others, and we have seen these characters a lot so far. We're not learning much new stuff about them. We are seeing Bunthorne's frustration come out a little bit more, which is interesting. That's what got it a 7 for emotional dramatic stakes. It's fun to see a character angry. I also gave it an 8 for character because we do get to see Jane and Bunthorne work together a little bit, and I often find myself in Patience wishing that Bunthorne and Jane would get together at the end because of this scene and the previous scene and what happens next and their duet. So this scene does have an effect on me. I really, really do love this scene. I think I'm just thinking that other ones before have just had a bit more of an impact on me. But it's so funny. I gave it a 7 for comedy. I gave it a 7 for beauty/poetry. It's a really, really good, strong scene. And there's lots of funny things you can do with it. But I think as I'm looking at the material really objectively, I am recognising that how good this scene will very much depend on how good the performers are. And that is actually not the case with a lot of these scenes. As I've been discovering, some of these scenes, the words just come so alive off the page that really, even if you're a very inexperienced performer, there's not really any way of saying these lines that wouldn't be good. But this scene, I do think, depends a little bit more on having good performers that understand comic timing and that deliver the lines in a certain way. Of course, those scenes where the lines go off the page very easily and it will also be better when done with very good performers, but this scene really does demand that in order to be good, I think. I'm also aware that Jane says, "And I will help you." But then does Jane help him? I mean, apart from giving him advice in the song about what to do, does she then actually help him after that? I don't know, because it seems to me like Bunthorne and Grosvenor sort it out themselves later, so I'm not really quite sure what part Jane has to play, but I'm here for it. If it's just the song, yeah, I'm here for that. There's like a little echo of what will be the Mikado in this scene as well. Do let a poet soliloquize, which is very funny. And I think it's made better use of in the Mikado, but it's also really funny here. I also love Bunthorne's line, "I know what it is. It's his confounded mildness." What a silly thing to say. That's just... people just don't speak like this, but they should speak like this. And it would please me if they did. So this one gets a 37 out of 50. And
probably compared to some of the scenes that I've discussed in other operas, it would actually do better than some of the ones that got a similar mark. But for this opera and by new parameters, I don't think it's maybe the strongest scene of them all, but I still really love it.
Yes, it's quite clear that our only chance of making a lasting impression on these young ladies is to become as aesthetic as they are. No doubt. The only question is how far we succeeded in doing so. I don't know why, but I have an idea this is not quite right. I don't like it. I never did. I don't see what it means. I do it, but I don't like it. My good friend, the question is not whether we like it, but whether they do. They understand these things. We don't. Now, I shouldn't be surprised if this is effective enough. At a distance. I can't help thinking we're a little stiff at it. It would be extremely awkward if we were to be struck so. I don't think we shall be struck so. Perhaps we're a little awkward at first, but everything must have a beginning. Now, here they come. Attention!
Oh, Sophia, see. The immortal fire has descended on them, and they are of the inner brotherhood, perceptively intense and consummately utter. How Botticellian, how Fra Angelican, O art, we thank thee for this boon.
I'm afraid we're not quite right.
Not supremely, perhaps, but oh, so all but. Sophia, are they not quite to all but? They are indeed jolly utter.
I wonder what the inner brotherhood usually recommend for cramp. Ladies, we will not deceive you. We are doing this at some personal inconvenience with a view of expressing the extremity of our devotion to you. We trust that it is not without its effect.
We will not deny that we are much moved by this proof of your attachment. Yes, your conversion to the principles of aesthetic art in its highest development has touched us deeply. And if Mr. Grosvenor should remain obdurate, which we have every reason to believe he will,
I wish they'd make haste.
we are not prepared to say that our yearning hearts will not go out to you.
By sections of threes. Rapture.
Oh, it's extremely good. For beginners, it's admirable.
The only question is, who will take who? Oh, the Duke chooses first, as a matter of course. Oh, I couldn't think of it. You are really too good. Nothing of the kind. You are a great matrimonial fish, and it's only fair that each of these ladies should have a chance of hooking you.
So this is one of the scenes that, like, coming into this, I thought this scene would be a really, really good one. I just know that this scene has a lot of good stuff in it. However, when compared to these incredible duologues between Patience Grosvenor and Patience Bunthorne, when compared to all these really strong scenes, this one actually doesn't seem as strong, but I do think that it is really funny. I think part of the reason it maybe doesn't scream brilliance as much as the others is because it's between many people whose characters are not individually so well defined. The Duke, I think, as I was saying before, is a really well-defined character, but his character I don't think is particularly vivid in this scene as an individual. It's more just a bunch of funny people saying funny things, and that is very, very valid and very funny. It's what most of the operas have been up until now. It's what most of the scenes are like in Pirates, to be fair. And there are some very, very funny lines in this. Oh, art, we thank thee for this boon. And just the whole absurd situation of the men kind of in this angular and flat position and just waiting for the women to make up their minds as being very slow and flamboyant and expressing themselves. I do find it hilarious. I gave it a 9 for comedy. I think the lines in it are really, really good. I wonder what the inner brotherhood usually recommends for crap. It's so wholesome. The dragoons are such lovely people. They're really nice. They are doing such a nice thing for these ladies, and the ladies appreciate it. They're not laughing at them, which is also very nice as well. And it does further emphasize the point I was making before, that this really is just a fad. that these ladies like poetry, and really they do love these men. They promised themselves to them, and that was obviously for a reason. And while I don't find it particularly satisfying that yes, all the upper class people end up together, of course they do, it's still very sweet to see that really everyone has ended up with who they should end up with. So they do really go well together, these people, and it's so honest the way they are speaking to each other and how well the maidens respect that they've tried to do something nice. And in the days when feminism wasn't really a movement yet, at least not in popular culture, it's lovely that these men were really respecting these women as people and wanting to do something nice for them. And they're talking like people. However, then you get the ludicrousness of the fact that they haven't even decided who's going to marry who, and it's pretty much arbitrary. Which I don't think there was genuinely much truth behind this. But then again, you know, in Victorian times, marriage sometimes was treated as a business transaction, and it's very likely that Gilbert was mocking this in some way, that marriage is just seen as something really flippant. And even today, people still see marriage as quite a flippant thing, and that they just get married to somebody who they think they get on with, and then that's when the divorce rate is really high, isn't it? Divorce is nearly obsolete in England. I gave it an 8 for narrative importance. It's really good that this plot is wrapped up here, so we understand, this is what has happened to the dragoons and to the maidens. I only gave it a 6 for emotional / dramatic stakes, so, you know, it's not one of those scenes that is going to, like, make you cry. I actually gave it a 9 for narrative importance. I do appreciate how this scene has wrapped up the story between the maidens and the dragoons, and it's come to a relatively satisfying conclusion. One of the more satisfying conclusions in GNS operas. That's Gilbert's weakness, I find, his wrapping up of storylines. Sometimes he doesn't wrap them up too well, but I think in this case he's done a pretty good job. Yes, it's ridiculous, but isn't life ridiculous?
It is very pleasant to be alone. It is pleasant to be able to gaze at leisure upon those features which all others may gaze upon at their goodwill. Ah, I am a very narcissus.
It's no use. I can't live without admiration. Since Grosvenor came here, stupidity has been at a premium. Ah, he is there.
Ah, Bunthorne, come here. Look. Very graceful, isn't it?
Allow me, I haven't seen it. Yes, it is graceful.
Good gracious, no, not that. This.
You don't mean that. Bah, I'm in the mood for trifling.
And what is amiss?
Ever since you came here, you have entirely monopolized the attentions of the young ladies. I don't like it, sir.
My dear sir, how can I help it? They are the plague of my life. My dear Mr. Bunthorne, with your personal disadvantages, you can have no idea of the inconvenience of being madly loved at first sight by every woman you meet.
Sir, until you came here, I was adored.
Exactly. Until I came here. That's my grievance. I cut everybody out. I assure you, if you could only suggest some means whereby, consistently with my duty to society, I could escape these inconvenient attentions, you would earn my everlasting gratitude.
I will do so at once, however popular it may be with the world at large. Your personal appearance is highly objectionable to me.
It is? Oh, thank you. Thank you. How can I express my gratitude?
By making a complete change at once. Your conversation must henceforth be perfectly matter-of-fact. You must cut your hair and have a back parting. In appearance and costume, you must be absolutely commonplace.
No, pardon me. That's impossible.
Take care. When I'm thwarted, I'm very terrible.
I can't help that. I am a man with a mission, and that mission must be fulfilled.
I don't think you quite appreciate the consequences of thwarting me.
I don't care what they are.
Suppose, I won't go so far as to say that I will do it, but suppose for one moment I were to curse you. Very well, take care.
But surely you would never do that.
I don't know. It would be an extreme measure, no doubt. Still.
But you would not do it. I'm sure you would not. Oh, reflect. You had a mother once.
Never.
Then you had an aunt. I see you had. By the memory of that aunt, I implore you to pause ere you resort to this last fearful expedient. Oh, Mr. Bunthorne, reflect.
I must not allow myself to be unmanned. It is useless. Consent at once, or may a nephew's curse.
Hold. Are you absolutely resolved?
Absolutely.
Will nothing shake you?
Nothing. I am adamant.
Very good. Then I yield.
Ah, you swear it?
I do. Cheerfully. I have long wished for a reasonable pretext for such a change as you suggest. It has come at last. I do it on compulsion.
Victory. I triumph.
So what is so good about this scene is that we know these two characters so well from other scenes, from other songs, and this is the first time they've been together, and apart from very briefly in the Ackland family, but they don't directly communicate with each other, and it's so amazing to see what their conversation's finally like. It's in some ways like the big climax of the show, really. It's all heading towards this point, and both of them maintain their characters really well. I gave it a 9 out of 10 per character. Didn't give it a 10. We'll see why in a moment. I also gave it a 9 out of 10 for comedy, a 9 out of 10 for beauty/poetry. I don't really feel like this scene is maybe quite as funny as the Patience Grosvenor scene or the scene with Grosvenor's poems, but I do absolutely love it. I did give it a 10 out of 10 for narrative importance based on how well it moves on the plot. The weakness I find in this scene, and it's only a slight weakness, I still gave it a 45 out of 50. The weakness in this scene, maybe compared to the Patience Grosvenor scene, is that to me, I don't know if it's very convincing, that switch that Grosvenor has at the end. I find it a little forced, only a little bit. I feel like we get away with it because the scene is so funny and the characters are so vivid, but I have just docked it, a mark or so off each category because I'm just aware that while this scene is very good and very funny, and it's often my favourite scene in the show, especially because often you get the two really good actors playing Bunthorne Grosvenor. This is a scene you look forward to. But I'm also aware that it isn't quite as realistic as some of the other scenes, and you don't all have to come shouting at me. I know that Gilbert and Sullivan is not designed to be realistic, but anyone who's watched Toffee Turvy will know that Gilbert and Sullivan were both really wanting to get real human emotion into their shows, and actually I think their best work is when they do, when they have managed to get the best of human vulnerability. And this, just the way this is resolved, I don't find as satisfying as how beautifully both real and absurd that scene with Patience and Grosvenor is in the first act. Having said that, I do think this scene is utterly gorgeous, language-wise. It is very, very funny. May a nephew's curse hold. You had a mother, never, but you had an aunt. Oh, I know. There are so many things you can do with this. That bit when Grosvenor likes, no, not that, this. There's so much good stuff in this scene. What's really cool about this scene is that when these two characters finally meet each other, what their flaws are is highlighted in a way maybe it wasn't before, and you get to see how manipulative Bunthorne is. To be fair, we have seen that before, but just the depths to which he'll go, I find it very funny. I suppose I were to curse you, it's just so silly. Grosvenor, you get to see that, maybe he isn't so perfect. He is willing to actually just give in to Bunthorne, and perhaps he's thinking in the back of his mind about Patience. But that is ultimately why I don't find it so satisfying, because I think to myself, if he was willing to do this all along, yet he wasn't willing to do it for Patience, so he gave in to a threat, but he didn't do it for love. And for me, I don't find that particularly satisfying. Let me know if you agree with that. I do love both of these characters and I love this scene, but I do think that the way Gilbert resolves his plot sometimes is a bit and this is not so clear to me. It's not clear to me the trajectory of these characters.
It is all right. I have committed my last act of ill nature, and henceforth I'm a changed character.
Reginald, dancing, and what in the world is the matter with you?
Patience, I am a changed man. Hitherto I have been gloomy, moody, fitful, uncertain in temper, and selfish in disposition.
You have indeed.
All that is changed. I have reformed. I have modelled myself upon Mr. Grosvenor. Henceforth I am mildly cheerful. My conversation will blend amusement with instruction. I shall still be aesthetic, but my aestheticism will be of the most pastoral kind.
Oh, Reginald, is all this true?
Quite true. Observe how amiable I am.
But Reginald, how long will this last?
With occasional intervals for rest and refreshment, as long as I do.
Oh, Reginald, I'm so happy. Oh, dear Reginald. I cannot express the joy I feel at this change. It will no longer be a duty to love you, but a pleasure, a rapture, an ecstasy.
My darling.
But, oh, horror.
What's the matter?
Is it quite certain that you have absolutely reformed? That you are henceforth a perfect being? Utterly free from defect of any kind?
It is quite certain. I have sworn it.
Then I never can be yours.
Why not?
Love, to be pure, must be absolutely unselfish. And there can be nothing unselfish in loving so perfect a being as you have now become.
But stop a bit. I don't want to change. I'll relapse. I'll be as I was. Interrupted.
Yeah, so now we're getting into the scenes that maybe aren't so strong because, as I was saying, Patience does tend to trail off towards the end in terms of narrative. I do think we lose the characters' intentions a little bit. And, I'll say it again, I understand that these plots are meant to be topsy-turvy, but topsy-turvy doesn't mean inconsistent. It doesn't mean messy. It doesn't mean rules that were established are now being thrown away. Like, that is not topsy-turvy. That's just kind of lazy writing, really. And I'm not accusing Gilbert. Well, maybe I am accusing Gilbert of being slightly lazy here. This is the trouble. He creates these incredible characters and then I think doesn't really do them justice. This scene, I do actually think happens to be fine. We do get some more story coming across. I did give it an 8 for narrative importance because I do appreciate that Patience has actually managed to get herself out of this situation by using the fact that Bunthorne has actually changed in order to please her. Do I think she really is pleased at the change? I think yes, I think she has to be. It's very difficult to play this scene as if she is predicting herself saying, oh, horror. She kind of really does have to think, oh, this is going to be a good thing. And so that involves her temporarily forgetting about Grosvenor, which to me seems a little bit odd because she was so in love with him earlier. So it is starting to be very difficult to portray the character of Patience. While she was very intuitive in earlier scenes, she's becoming very difficult to play now, in my opinion. I think it's quite difficult to get across what she feels because it's not really very clear what she feels. I gave it a 7 out of 10 for comedy. I do appreciate the ridiculousness and the irony of him switching, and so because he is now nice all of a sudden, even though I don't believe it for a moment, she now can't love him because it's no longer unselfish to love him. It is very silly. I gave it a 7 for beauty/poetry. Perfectly good language, but nothing really to write home about, I think. But I did only give it a 6 for emotional/dramatic stakes and a 7 for character. As I say, I just don't find this scene a terribly satisfying roundup of everything that's happened. It's not the final scene, there's one more to go, but it doesn't really reflect the characters as well as I would have liked after all he's done to build them up and make them into these fully fleshed out individuals. It is actually interesting to me that not every scene from Patience is brilliant.
It's good actually, because it means they're a little bit easier to rank, and maybe some of the scenes from Pinafore and Saucer would actually rank better than some of these slightly worse scenes. I do still maintain that Patience is a huge step up from the operas that came before it in terms of dialogue. But yeah, you do start to see that he isn't as good as wrapping things up, I think, as he is at fleshing out characters to begin with.
Angela, Ella, Sophia, what does this mean?
It means that Archibald the all-right cannot be all-wrong, and if the all-right chooses to discard aestheticism, it proves that aestheticism ought to be discarded. Oh, Archibald. Archibald, I'm shocked. Surprised. Horrified.
I can't help it. I'm not a free agent. I do it on compulsion.
This is terrible. Oh, I shall never set eyes on you again, but... Oh, joy!
What is the matter?
Is it quite certain that you will always be a commonplace young man?
Always. I have sworn it.
Why, then there's nothing to prevent my loving you with all the fervour at my command.
Why, that's true.
My Archibald!
My patience.
Crashed again.
Cheer up. I am still here. I have never left you, and I never will.
Thank you, Jane. After all, there's no denying it. You are a fine figure of a woman.
My Reginald.
My Jane. Ladies, the Duke has at length determined to select a bride. I have a great gift to bestow. Approach such of you as are truly lovely. In personal appearance, you have all that is necessary to make a woman happy. In common fairness, I think I ought to choose the only one among you who has the misfortune to be distinctly plain. Jane.
Duke.
Crashed again.
Oh, this was a lot of dialogue to get through. And I actually did like this scene more than I thought I would after looking at the last one. The bit I don't particularly like, as I've been saying before, is this resolution between Patience and Grosvenor. I don't find it very sensible. I don't really quite understand it. I appreciate the irony of it, but it's just a very difficult character to play. And after much consideration on how to play this part, because I've tried to play her as if she comes in and actually knows exactly what she's going to do. Oh, Grosvenor, I am shocked, but oh, joy. You know, but I don't think you can play it like that. I don't think you can play Patience as a character who has plans. I think every reaction has to be genuine. And that makes her very shallow, because she herself is saying she's plain homely unattractive, yet she no longer likes Grosvenor when he is more conventional, but she wasn't attracted to him being unconventional in the first place. She actually didn't like the fact that he was a poet. So it doesn't really make sense to me that she wouldn't be attracted to him looking more conventional, because she herself is very conventional. She's meant to be, you know, the everyman, the observer. So why would Grosvenor looking like this not be attracted to her after everything they've been through, after being in love as children, having that experience and falling in love in a beautiful way they did in Act 1, with that emotional connection they had in Act 2. I do find this a letdown. I'm sorry, but I do. However, there are other elements of this scene that I find really funny. I love how fickle the ladies are. That is hilarious. If the all-right chooses to discard asceticism, then asceticism ought to be discarded. It is just lovely. It's that twisted logic which just works so well in this bizarre universe. I love that. I love the Duke coming on and I have a great gift to bestow. And that subversion with Jane, like, after she's been following Bunthorne around the whole time and is in love with him, then suddenly it's just, oh wait, someone else likes me who was like fancy. And it's just after all that time setting herself up as this incredibly artistic character who is very devoted to one person, probably because of his artistic beauty, because of his unconventionalness. She then just goes for the most fancy conventional person ever, which I find really, really funny. And bizarrely, I don't find this cloying in the same way that I find Patience and Grosvenor cloying. I think it's because You feel that perhaps Jane's love towards Grosvenor was maybe some kind of self-sabotage because of her own insecurities, because of her own feelings about herself. But when she was actually validated, she found that actually, oh yeah, I do like this other person. Because Bunthorne actually hasn't been particularly nice to her, so I actually find this quite satisfying when Jane just totally flips. Because she is like the other maidens in a way. She's a little bit more self-aware than they are, but I do think it's very funny that she flips. So I don't mind about that at all. And I did give the scene an 8 for comedy, and most of it is just about Jane's change of heart. 7 for beauty/poetry, I think is just a lovely scene with lovely language, maybe not quite so advanced as some of the other scenes in the show. A 6 for character, as I'm saying. I'm just upset by Patience and Grosvenor. I don't get it. I understand the joke, like I don't need the irony explained to me. I just find that very hard as an actor. It's hard to understand the truth behind that. And I do think truth is important. Narrative importance, I gave it an 8. It does wrap things up in a way that makes sense, even if it's not that satisfying. Emotional dramatics, I gave a 7. I appreciate Bunthorne is distressed by these turns of events, and that is quite funny. So I think Patience doesn't wrap things up horribly. It's more just Patience's character that I find a bit unsatisfying the way that ends. But all in all, this dialogue has just been tremendous. Let me put them in order. So this is the final ranking of the Patience dialogue. So coming in at number 14, we have Bunthorne and Patience in Act 2. I thought that wasn't going to do particularly well. Coming in at number 13, we have the pre-Act 2 finale scene. I didn't think this was too bad, but these are just all very strong scenes. Coming in at number 12, we have Jane's little monologue, very short but sweet monologue. Lovely scene, but just not really long enough to give a very high mark. Coming in at number 11, we have Jane and Bunthorne scene together. I thought this would do better, but again, it is quite a short scene, so that probably explains why it didn't do so well. Coming in at number 10, we have the second dialogue of the show, which is Patience speaking to the Maidens. Again, quite a short scene, maybe not quite so many jokes as in the other scenes, but still a very funny scene with lots of strong stuff in it. Number 9 is the pre-quintet scene, before If Sophia I Choose to Marry. Not a lot of really intricate character work going on here, but still a very funny scene full of many, many classic lines. A very loved scene. Then coming in at number 8, one of my favourite scenes is Duke and the Dragoons, so the Toffee scene, which, wow, the fact that's come number 8, and that's one I absolutely adore, shows that all the other scenes above it must be very, very strong indeed. So coming in at number 7, we have Bunthorne and Ensemble. This is where Bunthorne reads his poem. Again, wow, this scene, it gets 41 out of 50. It's a tremendously good scene. And absolutely no problems with it here. Very much depends on getting a very good Bunthorne, so it might not be as funny as other scenes in some productions, but this has the potential to be an utterly show-stopping scene. Number 6, I have given to the scene with Patience, Bunthorne and Angela. Some of the funniest lines in the show, maybe even in the canon. A really good character development and character display, if you will, of Bunthorne. Maybe not so much of Patience, but Angela again is very, very funny in it. It's a very long scene. That maybe is what causes it to come a little bit lower, just because it doesn't have the same neatness and the same cleanness as maybe some of the ones above it. Coming in at number 5, we have the first dialogue in the show with the Rapturous Maidens. And I'm very glad this came so high. It is such a good, clean expositional scene. Such vivid characters in this first scene. Angela, Ella, Sophia, Jane tell us who they are so successfully in so few words. It's not a terribly long scene, but yet we learn so much in it. We learn all about them, who they love, and the shallowness of their love for this aesthetic, fleshly poet. Coming in at number 4, we have the Grosvenor's poem scene, which to me is one of the funniest scenes in the canon, but there are just better scenes above it. Number 3 is the long scene between Patience, Grosvenor, Bunthorne and Jane in Act 2. Again, quite a long scene, really funny, really emotional, very beautiful language. narratively important, lots of really great stuff going on here. Very, very high place scene and well deserved 3rd place. Number 2 is the scene between Bunthorne and Grosvenor, which comes at the end of the act, slightly hampered by the fact that it resolves in a way that's maybe a little bit silly, but nothing can erase how funny this scene is, how iconic some of these lines are, how amazing it is for these characters who have been so important all the way through to finally come together and have this amazing conversation. But I thought this scene would come number 1, and it did. The scene between Patience and Grosvenor in Act 1. Absolutely love this scene. Utterly magnificent comic scene, very emotional scene, surprisingly real for being so topsy-turvy. Flawless, really. One of the best scenes in the canon. An absolute pleasure to perform. And a very well-deserved 1st place. So, that is it for me analysing these Patience dialogue scenes. I do hope you have enjoyed this. I'm going to go to a wedding reception now. But please subscribe to this channel. It would be very nice if you did that. You can also actually go to the Forbear Theatre website and donate to us. We are currently trying to raise funds for our production of The Gondoliers at Hever Castle. We're doing HMS Pinafore in the summer in Ettington Park. We are also hopefully planning our 8-person production of Utopia Limited to happen at some point, venue TBC. So get involved. Tell me what you think in the comments about what we're doing. Do you like these videos? Tell me you like them. Please. I like them.